So hi and welcome. We're so glad that you came today. It's really a roundtable, and that's why we created this space that we have today, just to have a discussion about the role of the parent mentor, what we do, and how we can assist families with students with disabilities. And so my name's Julia Timberlake, and I'm the parent mentor for Kettering.
And I'm Dawn Millhouse, and I am the parent mentor for Centerville and Oakwood schools.
And so the first question that we thought we'd clarify is, what is a parent mentor and what role do we play? And so we have just a general explanation here about what we do, and really we're collaborators and relationship builders, and that's how I always view myself. Is I'm kind of that bridge between families and the district to assist families through the special education process, to work on like that communication piece of it. Sometimes as parents, it's hard to know how to communicate something to a school district, or even what to say, and so we kind of help facilitate that. There's some other things that we do as well.
I think one of the big things that I do in my role is I connect families to community resources, and like she said, just helping build that relationship, because, and what I tell parents is, when you're adversarial, nobody's needs get met. So we need to have that collaborative relationship to really build the program that you want for your son or daughter.
And that is, I agree, John, that's like how you really build that, the best student outcome, as we might say in the education world, is by building that relationship. But it also comes at knowing how to advocate well for your child, and knowing what your rights are as a parent, and knowing the rights that you have that you can exercise as you go along the process. And so, as our title states, we're a mentor. We're not advocates, we're a mentor. And so we help equip families to advocate for their kids as they go through the special education process.
Yeah, and I always, the difference, I always say the difference between being a parent mentor and being a parent advocate is, as a parent mentor, I'm going in and helping families find their voice so that they can be the advocate, as opposed to an advocate who you're paying to be your voice. And so why did I become a parent mentor? I was already doing the job. I just wasn't getting paid, because I have a son with Down syndrome. He is 20. My 23-year-old has dyslexia and ADHD. And I went into the process with her in particular, not knowing what I was doing. Didn't know that I had to ask for an evaluation. I kept asking the teachers, and they were like, but then, and then she was seeing a reading intervention specialist. So I thought she was in special education, but she wasn't, because, it's an intervention specialist. Why do we use all the same words? I get so frustrated by the use of all the same words. We have a reading specialist who's providing intervention, as opposed to a intervention specialist who's providing IEP services. Did we hear all the same words? I did. It is a very confusing process. So through my experience, I wanted to make sure that other parents weren't having the same struggles. And so when the position came open, it was kind of a no-brainer.
And so I'll speak for just kind of my experience. So like Dawn, I have a son with Down syndrome. He is 18 now. He just turned 18, and he's a senior in high school. So I started the process with Help Me Grow, and then continued into the public school system. And it's a confusing process. I think at first, when he first started the process, when I was not a parent mentor and Help Me Grow, you just kind of get on the lake and you just float down the stream. And you trust that the school district is doing the right things. You trust that the teachers are doing the right things. You trust that they understand, and not that they don't. But I feel like as he grew and his needs changed and the needs became more difficult and harder to figure out, it seemed like once we figured out one thing, something would change. And so I just feel like I wanted to know more. I wanted to know more. And like Dawn said, when the position came open, I applied for it. And for me, it was a selfish reason. It was, I wanted to understand how to help my son. I wanted to understand what my rights were as a parent. I wanted to understand the law surrounding special education. And I wanted to really understand, like going forward, what his life would look like and how I can best support him. And so it's because of those things that I became a parent mentor, but it grew into really loving what I do and really appreciating the ability to talk to families and to help families understand the special education process and help them navigate this and be that shoulder that they lean on and come to when they need help. Right. So, and so they asked us to talk a little bit about the history of the Parent Mentor Project, how it came to be, and then also why it's so important to families and school districts. And so there is a video that actually was created, and so I thought we'd show that because I think that best explains it.
When I'm meeting a new family, I describe a parent mentor as a friend.
A parent mentor is a person that supports other parents in their community whose children have been identified with special needs or perhaps are going through the process of being identified.
In a parent mentor role, our job first and foremost is to be there for families free of charge to help guide them through the special education process and connect them to community resources, to sometimes just be that person that they can lay their head on our shoulder and cry, because we grieve as parents.
So I'm a parent in Dublin City Schools, and our youngest son has disabilities. We contacted the parent mentoring program because we felt like we weren't getting the help that we needed. And we just felt like there were a lot of roadblocks in the help that we were trying to get for our son. It's scary to navigate something that you've never navigated before, but then throw in that it's your child that you're trying to help, and you're trying to make things the best that you can for your child, and you literally don't know what you're doing. Where it did feel in the beginning like we were on one side, the school was on the other. With our mentor there, it didn't feel that way at all. It felt like there was definitely a bridge. Having someone alongside us who came in who was very calm, very confident, assertive, but in a very thoughtful way. And I will say it ended in an amazing way. We got the help that we needed. So I'm just forever grateful for that.
Of course, in 1975, the federal government and the Congress passed a law requiring that all states would educate all children with disabilities, and the state of Ohio then also passed a law to implement the Education of All Handicapped Children Act, which was passed by the Congress. Ohio passed the law in 1976. There were a number of laws, rules, and regulations that came from the federal government, and then the state government developed a set of procedures. So, as you might imagine, all of that made it rather difficult for the average parent on the street to understand. Part of the law required that parents be a part of the development of the individual education program, what we call the IEP, so that the parent gave their information about the child to the school, and that the child's educational program would be developed to enhance the child's strengths and to prepare that child for transition into the adult world. The Coalition for the Education of Children with Disabilities, who I'm here today representing, was tasked with figuring out what kind of activities at the local level would enhance parents' ability to participate fully in that process. We had about 400 people who attended 11 focus groups, and they seemed to come to a consensus, according to the survey instrument, that there was a need for an experienced parent who understood the process at their local district level, who could help them to understand so that they would be better able to be prepared to be a full participant in their child's education, both through the development of the evaluation and the IEP process, and then to carry out what they could at home as directed and working with the school. Given that, we were able, and we were invited, in fact, to come to speak before the administration of the Ohio Department of Education. That was arranged by the Director of Federal Programs, Dr. Ray Horn. And when we went to give that information to the administrative staff, he was the one who said, "I understand what you're talking about. You're talking about a parent mentor, someone who has walked that path and could guide the way for parents who are just understanding that their child has a disability and how to understand the language of the educators and how to be able to be a full participant in the meeting." It's not that easy to go into a meeting to talk about your child's needs. So that idea was born, and they decided that they could use federal funds to fund 3 pilot parent mentor projects. Well, as a matter of fact, there were more districts who wanted to be a part of this process than the Department of Ed had expected. Perhaps because it was parent initiated, they didn't think there'd be that many takers. But there were so many applications that came in. There were 37 applications for 3 projects representing about 120 school districts, which was 1/6 of the state's school districts, so there seemed to be enough that people were willing to vie for the $25,000. Dr. Horn was instrumental in having the number of funded projects be raised from 3 to 10 because there were so many really good applications, and he was pleased that the school districts wanted to do this. Luckily, the coalition was in a position to go to people in the Governor George V. Voinovich administration and get the funding put into the 1994-95 state budget, so that at that time $500,000 was requested, and the legislature approved that to start expanding from those 10 as many as they could fund. There are now, I believe, 72 funded parent projects. There's always been a waiting list, so that dollar amount grew from $500,000 to $1,500,000, and that was the maximum that's ever achieved. Some districts fund these projects out of local, federal IDEA flow-through dollars, and that's certainly another good use of those funds. Well, in 1984, the coalition had a winning proposal to the federal government for a statewide parent training and information center grant, which the federal government, the Office of Special Education Programs, were beginning to feel were necessary to support parents across the country. The Parent Training and Information Center model was a parent-to-parent model. So really, in some regard, you could say that parent mentor projects were many parent training and information projects. And so that was the model for the activities that were required in the request for proposal that the Office for Special Education Programs in Ohio put out to the school districts. They looked at why Ohio had such a low number of due process hearings. And there were two things that they ended up deciding were the reasons for the low number of hearings. One was the special education regional resource centers. The other were the parent mentors, because the parent mentors were helping the parents to understand the world that they were now living in of special education. They were helping parents to get their questions answered and to know how to ask for additional services, to know where to get additional resources, perhaps in the community. Maybe the school doesn't have mental health counseling, but there's a community mental health center that may have that. Finding those kinds of other agencies in the community that can help, understanding what those agencies can do and what they can't do, so that you don't waste, the parents don't waste a lot of time. The parent mentors have a definite role to play, and I don't think that the legislature would have put this program in place if they didn't think that it was going to be beneficial for everyone. The whole idea was to make the child the most successful citizen that they could be.
Our parent mentor has listened to me when things at my child's school didn't feel like they were going so great. She provided guidance and helped me better understand my rights as a parent. Most importantly, she advocates for what is best for the student in a professional manner. It is reassuring to know that she is only an email or a phone call away should I need her guidance.
Before meeting my parent mentor, I felt lost at sea. I wasn't sure how to help my child or how to navigate the school system. My mentor was like a beacon in the night. I'm honestly not sure where I'd be without her help. I've met not only a lifelong friend, but someone who completely understands what I was going through as a parent.
My mentor was a person who had a passion to help others. She was a listening ear and would supply answers to my many questions. My mentor made herself available to me and helped me in a time that I was overwhelmed and just not sure what to do next.
And so I think, I know the video said it was 72. We are up to about 100 parent mentor projects across the state now. And so it's increased as school districts have found value.
Right, and the number of districts impacted is high too, because we have a lot of parent mentors that are associated with the county ESC, and so then they serve multiple districts. So the services that we provide, we can, first and foremost, we can go to any school-based meeting, and that, so just to be a helping hand in that meeting, you know, just to feel like there's a friendly face, and we help parents understand their rights and responsibilities under the law. And I think that that's a super important part of what we do. is just explaining what it is that is being said. Because again, we use a lot of the same words, and we use words that only mean certain things in an educational setting. But if you use that word outside of the school setting, it would mean something completely different. And I think it's just a really confusing system.
Yeah, along those lines, like even Dawn and I were talking before the meeting about she had attended a meeting with a parent this morning, like a last minute phone call, and she just helped ask questions, just help ask appropriate questions, because I think in a meeting sometimes it is intimidating to be at the table. It feels like it's the school district is one of the parents described, and then there's you, and they're a part of this big tribe and clan, right? They know each other and they work together, and so sometimes it does feel separate. And I think the parent mentor role oftentimes helps bridge that gap and helps the parents voice the questions that are on their mind. We do other things too, in addition to meetings. Like Dawn mentioned, helping parents understand their rights and responsibilities. Oh my heavens, that's so big and deep. And even if you never ever exercise your right, your right to whatever that is, mediation or facilitation or filing due process or an advisory review, no matter what, like even just knowing my rights, it equips me to know, okay, I know what the next step is. If I'm still unsettled after all of this, if I've still done the things that I'm supposed to do, I know what the next step is. And there's something powerful about that, to me and to other families, I think, too. We help guide parents through the special education process, answer questions. We connect them, as Dawn said earlier, with community resources, and then also just hosting things like this to get information out, to help families understand. It's what we do is so broad in the scope. It's just so broad.
Right, and now we both have experience with the transition to adulthood services, and so I feel like I'm taking that information into even my preschool and kindergarten IEP meetings, because in a lot of cases those teachers in particular have no idea what the adult services look like. And so if I can start having those conversations with those parents, even though it's years and years away, if I can start having those conversations with them, I feel like not only are they better prepared later, but the IEPs are better because we're more focused on what's coming next.
No, and even like just listening to you talk just like made something click in my head. Like, I don't know, perhaps you as well. Like, I lay in bed at night sometimes and I think about the mistakes I've made, right? Man, I wish I would have gone back and done this differently. Man, I wish I would have known this, way back, when Jack was in a younger grade. And so like I take those thoughts and I take those and I apply it to the families that I'm serving now as well. So hopefully when they lay in bed at night, they won't think about the same mistake, if that makes sense. And I've heard you talk time and time again, and I feel the same way about data collection, just something as simple as data collection, which is just simply an accounting of the emails that have been sent, the conversations that have been had, the text messages that have come through, notes written home on papers, just a collection of all of the things that educators have spoken over my child and to me, just so I have a running tally and a full understanding and a scope of what's done. And so I can use that data then to make requests in meeting. And it really helps clarify. I've used it to pinpoint, okay, my son has trouble on Tuesdays. What's different about Tuesdays? What's going on Tuesdays that is perhaps we can tweak a little bit? And so it's just been super helpful. And I think it's things like that we've carried with us that has allowed us to just really enhance the services that we provide and the relationships we build.
Right.
So are there any types of requests that you get that are outside of your scope of work?
I mean, the biggest one is people who are not in my district. So I get a lot of requests from, Facebook where somebody will say, like, oh, I get tagged a lot, oh, Don Millhouse might know the answer to that question. And so even though, I can, and I tell people all the time that I can answer anybody's questions. Nobody's governing who I can talk to. I can only go to meetings inside my my 2 districts. But if I know something, I'm going to provide it to anybody who asks. So that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, and I think I was thinking as I was thinking about this question, like the most different type of request that I got received. And there was a situation where a family had a student with a disability that was using Medicaid transportation to get to and from appointments. And part of that was appointments like where she would have to stay for a while. She was upset that she wasn't allowed, like she could ride with her daughter, but then they wouldn't bring her back home apart from her daughter. And so it's just different types of requests like that. Like that would fall outside of my scope. But I think like anything, Don and I and other parent mentors are going to be as helpful as we possibly can. If we don't know who to call or we're not able to assist with that, then we're going to find the person who to call and direct you there. But in general, we can help with anything related to special education. Yeah.
And, frankly, I have been the person transporting. I have had several situations where I got a call and the family was like, I don't drive and I've got to go to this appointment in Cincinnati and I don't know how to get there and my kid needs to see this doctor and everything. And I'm like, get in the car. Well, let's go. So, yeah, I've done that probably 5 times. Yeah. So, it's just who I am. So I was just at a meeting at a private school today. The way the rules are written, if your kids are, even if your kids go to a private school or are homeschooled, their district of residence is still responsible for their services. I have attended several private school meetings. It gets tricky when the school is not in the district that you are because of the ETR. So there's a weird rule. Nobody's been able to explain to me why. But if let's say you live in Centerville, but the school that you are attending, that your child is attending is in Miamisburg, Centerville is responsible for the IEP, but Miamisburg is responsible for the ETR. Make it make sense.
And I'll add to that, it's not even an IEP necessarily.
Right, it's a service plan. So, right. So I can attend the IEP meetings at said particular school, but I cannot attend ETR meetings.
Yeah,
It's wild. But again, I can read the ETR and provide feedback to the parent so that they can go armed with some quality questions and or just even knowing that, it's well written. Telling parents that this is a well written document, I think empowers them too.
Yes, absolutely.
Just being able to say that.
And it is, like Dawn said, this is a tricky rule. And it varies whether or not you're utilizing the John Peterson or the Autism Scholarship. And like you said, district of residence versus where the school is located plays a part in that as well. It's the district's responsibility for students going to school in their district to identify them as a student that qualifies for services that require special education. And so, however, they're not required to provide services that are in the IEP. That's between the private school that they're, it's just so tricky. It's just so, if you have questions about private school and the rules regarding the private school, I know next quarter, I believe they're doing some presentations about the scholarship and how that works. And so I would just I would just attend those because those are going to be useful. Keep in mind that when your child does go to a private school, if you have placed your child in a private school, they do give up their right to FAPE, which is a principle in the laws regarding special education. And so they give up the right to free, appropriate public education. And so disputes about service plans aren't within the parent mentor scope of work, and it's through the private school. You take it through their chain of command. It's so tricky. So what about districts that don't have a parent mentor? And so we have a really an area that's pretty rich in parent mentors. And so Centerville, Oakwood, of course, is served by Dawn. I serve Kettering. There's also a parent mentor in Beaver Creek and Sugar Creek Township. I think she might cover Bellbrook as well. There's a parent mentor in Dayton as well, in Piqua and some other. Yes, Warren County has quite a few, and so we do have.
County has one that covers
Yes.
districts, and then there's a couple of the districts that have their own.
Yes, and so, but if you don't, there are other avenues. And I've given you a brochure a little bit. One is just a general brochure about parent mentors, and the other is about some of the other options. But the first organization in our area that typically supports families would be the Regional Educational Service Center and State Support Team 10. They're housed down in Dayton, and they cover 6 different counties: Clark, Dark, Greene, Miami, Montgomery, and Preble counties. And then there's a contact phone number to call them. You're able to call them even if your district is served by a parent mentor, but you just have some general questions, or perhaps you just want an outside perspective. And so sometimes families do utilize them quite a bit. There's also the Ohio Coalition for the Education of Children with Disabilities, which is what Margaret Burley was talking about on the video. And they are a nonprofit. They're a parent hub that serves families with students with disabilities, and their contact information is listed. Another 3 others that I thought of was the Children's Hospital Network often has educational support built into their system and can help you do some of the things and give you some direction. There's also disability-related support groups. Sometimes they have suggestions and offer some resources to families, as well as Dawn mentioned earlier, hiring a private private parent advocate. Can you think of any? Those are the ones that I thought of.
Those are the ones that I use.
Yep. And so that is the end of our presentation. And so perhaps this might be a good time to cut off the video so we can just talk. It was good to see you.